There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Productive Podcaster. This is Dr. Barrett Matthews again, and welcome to another episode. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I want to tell you about The Productive Podcaster podcast. And what it is about is this. If you are a podcaster, or if you're even thinking of becoming a podcaster, some people don't start it because they have some apprehension thinking they have to be perfect. Well, this podcast is to show you you don't have to be perfect. There is no cookie cutter way to do a podcast. So what I do on here, I bring on different guests, as I have a great one today, and I bring on different guests and let them talk about their podcast and what they do to let you know that, look, guys, there's so many different ways for you to run your podcast. So there's no need for you to sit back and wait. Just get it started. That's what we do here at The Productive Podcaster. Now, I also want you to do something else. I want you to share. Share with everyone. Let them know that you listen to The Productive Podcast or you're watching us on YouTube. However, just let them know that we are here. Also, guys, hey, if you want to support the show, go to Patreon. Check out The Productive Podcaster on Patreon. You can definitely support us. We'd love to have you. We have some great perks for you if you go there and check us out on Patreon as well. So what I want to do before I get going, I always like to start off the show with a segment we call Pros and Cons. Now, what is pros and cons? Pros and cons is where we give you guys a pro tip to make sure you're productive in doing your podcast. And today we're going to be talking about scripting your podcast. I have different viewpoints on scripting podcasts. Do I have a scripted podcast? In a way. I outline my podcast. I make sure that my podcast is set up a certain way so I know what I'm doing every single time. I don't read word for word things that some people do. Now, is that wrong for them? No, if it works for them, great. Some people like to go by the seat of their pants and just go through it, and it works for them. Great. My point to you is this: find out what works for you and then do it. But once again, don't let it stop you from doing a podcast because you're apprehensive, wondering if you need to be scripted or not. Try it out. If it doesn't work, try it another way. No one's going to judge you. Okay, just do it. All right, so that is pros and cons for today. So guys, as you already know, I always have great guests, right? Well, if you give me just 2 minutes, I'm going to bring back a great guest to you today as well. If you're ready to be led, get ready because I have a great guest coming up. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. How are you going to learn everything you need to know about starting a podcast? Well, at the Create Your Podcast Weekend, we put it all in 2 days and help you get your podcast going by next week. That's right, by next week. All you have to do is come to the Create Your Podcast Weekend and let us show you how to get your podcast up and running. We will show you how to attract listeners. We will show you how to get people to pay you for your products and services. What products and services? The products and services we show you how to create, all at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. All you have to do is go to createyourpodcastweekend.com and get registered today. And we have special bonuses. Some of you will even get us to give you the equipment to start your podcast. That's right. We're going to give some of you the podcasting equipment to get started. Go to createyourpodcastweekend.com. That's createyourpodcastweekend.com and get started on your podcast by next week. Why should you contact Media Boss Club right now? Well, because you can get a podcast done for you. You can learn all the aspects that go into putting together a great podcast and have someone else do it for you. That's right. We will build your podcast around your content and make it so you can concentrate on the money-making activities of your business. Contact MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com today and let us get your podcast started right now. back to the Productive Podcaster. Like I said before, I'm Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I have a great guest for you today. Man, let me tell you something. My guest, I like one thing about him because he's a man of God. He's a pastor. I love that. But you can't be a pastor unless you know a little something about leadership, right? Well, this man is a leadership expert. And guess what else? Guess what else? See, you all think, oh, he's going to talk you to death. No. He's not going to do that. Because guess what? He also has a book. He's an author. You can read his information. You can listen to him. You can watch him, whatever you want. He's here on the Productive Podcast today. I want to welcome none other than Mr. Chris Collier. Chris, welcome to the Productive Podcaster.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to have you, man. I'm glad to have you. So before I say any other thing, tell everybody about your podcast.
My podcast is Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. We generally deal with leadership topics, how to become successful, the thought-forming process of becoming a leader, an entrepreneur, a thought leader, a business owner, those type of things we deal with, how to be successful in life.
First of all, I love Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. Man, that slogan is so, I almost wish I could change my name to Chris because that is so cool. I love that. That's fantastic. Did you think of that?
I did.
Cool. I got to give you props for that, man. That was fantastic. Now, how long have you been podcasting?
We're going into our third season. So first season, we only had about 10 podcasts. Mm-hmm. I think this last season we had 20 and I have 10 in the can now. They're getting ready to go live over the next few weeks. So just really excited about season 3.
So in doing your podcast, first of all, I want to ask you, what made you do a podcast?
Well, I started one a long time ago. And I was using a service that's still around. It was a little bit clunky. You had to use your phone and whatnot. And I kind of got discouraged because some of the guests I had would and ah through their whole thing. And I want to encourage your people that might be listening or thinking about starting a podcast. If you're doing interviews with people, just because you interview them doesn't mean you have to use them. You can always just throw it away, right? So I got discouraged because I couldn't find good, real people to talk to with good, real things to say. I remember one time we interviewed this guy and he, yeah, well, you know what it's like. And, well, you know, and it was just a headache. And it really discouraged me. Look, just because you did it before and it didn't work, go and try again. It's okay. I want to say Edison, who created, who I believe it's Edison, he couldn't find a way to make the light bulb work, right? Mm-hmm. He said he found 999 ways the light bulb didn't work. So that means he was closer to finding the one way it does work. So just because it's not failure, it's learning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you said that. The disinfectant spray 409. They said it's 409 because that was the 409th attempt. So Formula 409. Like I said, it's all learning. It's all about learning. I love that, man. That's so. What kind of other than finding good speakers or guests, what other obstacles did you face in starting your podcast?
I was worried about the studio, the setup, the technology. I'm a pretty tech savvy guy, but I was really scared. And then, you know, another thing that got to me was the editing. Look at all this stuff you can outsource other than, you know, you can even outsource your studio. You can rent a studio from someone. You can pay someone to put one together for you. It's all, you know, it's all how deep you want to go, right?
Right.
And then you worry about people watching it who's not going to watch. Look, just do it. Somebody's watching. Someone is always watching.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what I tell people. I think too many people, Chris, I think they try to compare themselves to Joe Rogan. And, you know, and like, we're not going to get there overnight, you know? And he had celebrity before that. So. Yeah.
And it's not just Joe Rogan. People compare themselves to Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the guy who's the big passive income guy. He's had several podcasts and he's closed them down now because he grew his podcast. Such a great thing. Look, I'm gonna tell you my biggest downfall. I'm gonna be transparent in front of you. Consistency.
That's it.
You can't expect to be successful if you're not consistent. If you're placing, it's better to place one podcast a week then to do 5 1 week, 4 the next, 3 the
Mhm.
next, then 1. Be consistent. Keep whether you do them live or you can them and for a later date. Go ahead and do them, and get something out of every time you do it, even if it's just practice, right? Sometimes words don't come to you. Sometimes you don't know what to say, or if you're interviewing people, sometimes they don't say the right thing. Maybe they don't fit your show, even though they made it through the pre-interview process. Sometimes they just don't fit your show, and that's okay, because then you learn how to tighten up your pre-interview process.
Man, no truer words have been said, man. That is the absolute truth. So now, in doing your podcast, like you said, you've been doing it for a little while. You took a break and then come. Yeah, people ask me all the time, what if I run out of episodes? And like you heard him say it, he does different seasons. You can do that. And the thing I get across to people, Chris, a lot of times is that it's your show. It's your show. Did you ever have anything feeling that you had to be like anyone else when you started out, instead of saying, hey, you know what, this is mine?
Well, I do like to model myself after other people, because success leaves clues.
Yes, exactly.
But you can't be the next Gary Vaynerchuk. Be you. So you might follow some of his processes. Like I like Tom Ballou, or the guy used to be a football player. He School of Greatness. Lewis Howes. There you go. Okay. They're all great. They're both great podcasters, interviewers. But guess what? I don't have access to Grant Cardone. I don't have access to these big names. I have to get some people around here. And during the pandemic, we use Zoom a lot, right? So the thing is this: start off with people, your network, interview people in your network, and go from there. If you don't want to interview, it's okay just to talk. There's hundreds of talk shows, sports, pro wrestling, religious, political, whatever you want to cover, you can cover. It's your show, like he said. So I want to encourage you just to find what it is you like to do, because I'm going to tell you, if you do something you don't like to do, you won't do it. For me, I love doing this part of it, the interview, the interaction part. I hate doing the editing, the promotion, the marketing. That's not me. I'm going to pay someone else to do that from here on out, because that's not what I like to do. I don't have a passion for it. So because I don't have a passion for it, it's okay to get someone else to do that part. Treat your podcast like a business, and it'll take care of you.
Man, this is like one of the best interviews I've had, because he's dropping nuggets, man. He's just dropping some great nuggets on how to do a great. Can you tell he's in leadership? Can you tell? I sure can. I can definitely tell you. Now let me ask you something. Who you got guests on your show? Who would you say has been your guest that you've always wanted to have, and you finally got them?
That hasn't happened yet. I've had a lot of great people. I've had a lot of great people, and they're all great to interview.
Yeah, of course.
But I grew up a pro wrestling fan, and so like The Rock would be great. Dwayne Johnson.
If you get him, send him to me next.
I wouldn't mind Lewis Howes or Tom Ballou. They're both great. Gary Vaynerchuk, I've mentioned him several times. All those guys would be great. I think about anyone from Shark Tank would be good. Then on the flip side, if I want to do, I've had some great pastors on who just talk about how to live a quality life. So I think that there's some area there to grow. Actually, we might even be pivoting to more of Conquer with Chris, how to live your life in a godly way.
I love that.
So we might be pivoting, but I am an entrepreneur at nature as well as a man of God. So I'm like Paul, right? I build tents and I speak to people. So there's both those things going on.
And it's funny because one of the things that I did, like I got on the social media app Clubhouse, and I did a couple Clubhouses actually in relation to God, and I was really blessed one night. Like I'm in the DC area, and one of the biggest pastors in our area got on my Clubhouse.
Wow!
And then he brought 2 other bishops. I'm like, oh my gosh! I'm sitting there like on my Clubhouse, and it was so cool because my point to you guys is that you never know who you can attract, but you won't attract anyone if you stay quiet.
That's for sure. And not only that, but there's always someone watching. You don't know Like maybe that bishop's son or that pastor's son was a daughter, a family member, his PA was watching and said, "Hey, look at this guy." And that night you did the clubhouse, they watched and came in. So you don't ever know, who or what is you're going to attract, and who knows who. There's only 3 degrees of separation between any 2 people on this earth. So at any point you could be with the president of the United States, whether this one or a different one. So whether you like them or not, we still have the power of influence.
Now, let me ask you, your podcast is audio and video, correct?
Correct.
Did you always do it that way?
I have. Now, the videos haven't been uploaded like I would have liked. I'm still getting them edited. But yeah, I've always done audio and video. There's, I think, 1 or 2 episodes the people didn't have the video aspect. But I would suggest that you do both, because I'll tell you, Google rewards you for being on YouTube. And Google's the biggest search engine, and they say YouTube's the second biggest search engine, which is not true. YouTube's not a search engine; it's a video search engine. So it's a little bit different, but it's very good for you to be on YouTube.
A guest that I would love to have on mine is Sergey Brin of Google. Reason being, because he actually went to my high school.
Oh wow!
Yeah, now I'm a little older than him, but
hey, look it, I would try. Worst thing you can say is no.
Right, yeah, that's true. If I could reach him, worst thing you can say is no. You're right. I mean, I had some cool people I went to high school with. The singer Kenny Lattimore and the comedian Martin Lawrence went to high school.
Oh wow!
And they were in school with me. But it was just I would love to get Sergey Brin on here. I would love to talk Google with that. That'd be like so cool.
SEO, talk SEO.
Yeah, right. I'd love to.
And that'd be great for your podcast. Because I'm going to tell you, is one of the struggles for podcasters, know how to SEO your podcast. And I would say one of the things I would say is learn hashtags. Hashtags are key. So like he needs, for example, this podcast is the Productive Podcaster. Hashtag the Productive Podcaster. Mine is hashtag Conquer with Chris. LinkedIn is huge on hashtags. Twitter, of course, huge on hashtags. As a matter of fact, if you Google search a hashtag, you can get it to go to a website if you know how to manipulate certain things. So I want to encourage you, learn systems and processes. And if you don't want to, if you don't have that big of a passion, pay someone who does.
To do it, man.
It does. There's a place called Upwork. There's a place called Fiverr. Get those people. If you know someone who's, if you have friends that are younger and more intuitive with this stuff, and they understand it, pay them. If they're friends, they'll do it on the cheap.
Yeah.
But if they have a business, this is one of the things I caution. If they have a business, pay them what they ask for. Don't try to, I need a discount because I'm family. No.
Yeah, don't do that.
Just pay them.
Don't do that. Just pay them, right? Pay them. You're a client. They're a service provider. Pay them. Now, before I wrap up, I want to ask you about your book, man. Tell me about your book.
Oh, well, I got a copy here. It's called Program to Win, where purpose and passion meet. I'll just read you one real quick. It's real quick. Sure. Passion. Good way to tell you found your purpose or part of it is that you have passion for it. There's no way God will give you your purpose that you have no passion for. Find your passion, find your purpose, grow in your passion, focus on your passion. If you love helping people, find a way to help them in your passion. If you're passionate about helping people in a specific area or niche, find a way to use that and monetize it. Become a mission specialist in that passion. When you do, you're halfway to creating not only revenue, but fulfillment. See, there's a lot of people who make money. There's a lot of people who don't make money, but there's very few who find purpose and passion, have them come together. And when that comes together, you have power. And when you have power, let me tell you, you can overcome any obstacle because you were created to do something. You know, your car was created to do something. A bicycle can't do what a car can do, and a car can't do what a semi can do. There's a specific purpose to that car, a specific purpose to you. So when you find that purpose, marry it to your passion, and you can go a long way.
I love it. Man, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this interview right here, except for one thing. Chris, please tell everyone the name of your podcast and where they can find you, my man.
Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. You can find me on Facebook at Conquer with Chris. And you can also go to my website, conquerwithchris.com.
I love it. Man, I swear I just want to change my name to Chris just so I could get back that slogan with. I thought that is so cool. The podcast you don't want to miss. So guys, don't miss his podcast. As a matter of fact, I want you to go subscribe to it right now. Make sure that you are paying attention to Conquer with Chris, because it is the podcast you don't want to miss. So Chris Collier, I want to thank you so much for joining us. But guess what, guys? He's not going anywhere. He's going to be right here because we're going to take a break and we're going to come back with the segment we call PodQuest, where we take a question from our audience members. So stick right here. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. It's time to be a boss, a media boss. If you're in business for yourself, it's time that you get your message out, and podcasting is the best way to do it. Let us create a done-for-you podcast experience with Media Boss Club. All you have to do is go to MediaBossClub.com and we'll create a done-for-you podcast right now. That's MediaBossClub.com. Starting a podcast can be a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into it, and you're probably wondering if you're able to handle it. Well, why don't you just take 2 days and let us teach you how to do it at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. That's right. We're going to show you all the aspects of how to start your podcast, how to keep your podcast going, how to attract listeners, and how to make money with your podcast. CreateYourPodcastWeekend.com. Get registered right now. Let's face it, you've been talking about starting a podcast for quite some time, but you haven't started yet. Why is that? Could it be that you just don't have the time because your day-to-day keeps you so busy? Or could it be that you don't want to learn all the technical aspects that go into putting together a quality podcast? Well, at Media Boss Club, we take care of that for you. How would you like to have a done-for-you experience? That's right. At Media Boss Club, we build your podcast for you. We will edit your podcast. We will put in the music for you. We even put in commercial breaks that you can put your advertisers in. We will take care of all of the uploading to the great podcast platforms that are out there. That's right, we do everything. All you have to do is just right now go to MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com, and let us handle the heavy lifting for you. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. Was Chris great or was Chris great? I'm telling you, I love that. I love the book. I love his talk. I love all the tips he gave. I hope you guys were taking notes. The great thing about podcasts, you can listen to it again. So make sure that you go back and take notes. But now it's time for PodQuest. And you know, PodQuest is where we take an audience question. And like I said, Chris is still here with me. So Chris, the question we have today is, and before I do that, before I go any further, because I always do this too late. People want to know, how can they get a question asked on the Productive Podcaster? Well, it's simple. You go to our Facebook group. What is our Facebook group? The Productive Podcaster. And so make sure you go there, get on the Productive Podcaster, and put your questions in, and we will see if we can get your question on our podcast so we can get an answer. So Chris, the question today is, how can I best market or promote my podcast? So I'm gonna let you answer first, then I'll give my answer.
Well, there's several best practices. I'll give you a couple just off the top. Go on someone else's podcast, because likelihood, if you have commonality, some of their people will also like to be listen to your podcast. Second way is promote the mess out of it on social media. Get friends, family to listen and subscribe, and get them to kind of make it go virtual by having them share it every time you have an episode. Now, if you have a daily episode, please don't expect them to share it every day. unless it's gold, unless you know how to make it gold right away, get people to share and like and subscribe and incentivize them. Patreon's another good way, because once they become inner circle, or however you differentiate the levels, they will share that podcast automatically because they're paying and they're invested. So, and when they become a Patreon member, get some kind of classy t-shirt to them, so they'll advertise your podcast by wearing the t-shirt. So that's a couple different ways. Thank you so much.
Those are great. Those are great. And one of the things that he hit on at the top, when he said get on someone else's podcast, also get them on your podcast. Get people on your podcast and find out what they're promoting and promote it. You don't have to necessarily promote it on your podcast, but you can promote it in your groups. You can promote it in other areas in other business things that you do. Promote what they do, because guess what that's going to do? It's going to create some type of loyalty. And then there's something they call the law of reciprocation. People feel if you do something for them, that they ought to do something for you. All you ask them to do is subscribe or send people to you. Now, another thing, if you have an email list, if you have a list of people, send them a nice email. Put your link where they can subscribe. Say, hey, I'm doing a podcast. I'm not selling you anything. All I'd just like for you to do is do me a favor, just subscribe to it. Once you get them subscribed, now you can get them into where they're following you, where they're listening to you. And you can also create some type of lead magnet where you give them something for free just for subscribing. And now you've got the information, so you can send them more emails. Let them know about special episodes you have coming up. Find out what interests they have. One thing I always suggest to people is on social media, find out what people like. Find out what they'd like to, hey, I'm doing a podcast on technology. What would you like to know about technology? Let them talk about it. Then when they tell you, now you'll know if you got a guest coming up in that area, you can send them all messages letting them know this. So that's another way to do it as well. So that is PodQuest for today. Chris, before I let you go again, I want to make sure you let them know how they can get in touch with you and listen to your podcast.
Facebook at conquerwithchris.com and at conquerwithchris.com. And Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss.
I love it, man. Chris, once again, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the Productive Podcast of the day, man. You've been a joy. It's funny thing is, guys, you think I've known Chris for a lifetime. We just met. But he is just one of the coolest people I know, and I'm glad. Chris, you know you're welcome here anytime. I mean, anytime.
Pleasure's all mine.
Oh man, I thank you for that. So, guys, say goodbye to Chris, but make sure you guys subscribe to Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. So, guys, guess what it's time for right now before we let you go? It is time for our podcast profile. That's why I tell you about a podcast that I listen to. I think you guys may enjoy as well. And that podcast happens to be one called We Really Don't Get Relationships. It's by Dr. Daniel Odukoya and Tina Green. We Really Don't Get Relationships. You can check it out on the major podcast sites. But I really like that podcast. They make a good team together and they talk about relationships. So some of you may want to listen to it. Now, it's also time for our podcast giveaway. That's right. We have a podcast giveaway. How do you get in the giveaway? You join the Facebook group, The Productive Podcaster, and you may get a prize like Julian Hill. Julian Hill is our prize winner today. And what does Julian Hill get? Julian is going to get an audio copy of my best-selling book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? A guide to helping you get off your assets. Why didn't you get it done? Julian Hill, you're going to get an audio copy of that. So Julian, congratulations on that. It'll be coming to you in your email very, very shortly. So as I like to end every episode of Productive Podcast is with a productivity quote. And today's quote comes from Heral Nagda. And the quote is, every day, even a tiny step taken towards your dream is a day iconically lived. I'm going to say that one more time because I don't think y'all heard me in the back. Every day, even a tiny step taken towards your dream is a day iconically lived. So guys, that's today's episode of Productive Podcaster. I want to thank you for joining. I want to thank my guest, Chris Collier, for joining me as well. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check us out on Patreon as well. We thank you so much. And as I always say before I leave, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all. And take action, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.